I wanted to ask you about a New York Times report long ago in 1927 that your grandfather, Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, was arrested at a Ku Klux Klan riot in Queens, New York. The article is subtitled "Klan Assails Policemen." It reports that 1,000 Klansmen and 100 policemen staged a free-for-all battle. It lists Fred Trump with his address as one of 7 men who were arrested and arraigned for the assault. Charges against him were dropped. New York Police Commissioner Warren is quoted in the article saying the Klan not only wore gowns but had hoods over their faces, almost completely hiding their identity. The report was found and published in 2015 by the website Boing Boing. In a New York Times interview about the discovery, your uncle, Donald Trump, said, "I saw that it was one little website that said it. It never happened. They said there were no charges, no nothing. It's unfair to mention it, to be honest, because there were no charges. They said there were charges against other people, but there were absolutely no charges. Totally false," he said. But we're going back to that 2017 report in the New York Times. Do you know about this, Mary Trump? Did you hear about it as you were growing up?
No, I didn't. Although, my family wasn't great at telling stories. But, unlike Donald, I don't doubt the validity of the report. It would be kind of a random thing to make up 60 years ago or 80 years ago, whenever it was. The only thing that surprises me, because, my family was quite anti-Semitic, along with other things. So the only thing that surprises me is that my grandfather would take time away from his business to go to anything, honestly. But it wouldn't surprise me that he shared the sentiment.
Did you ever hear Donald Trump, your uncle, use the N-word?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I know that sounds awful to put it that way, but when you live in a family, and you're a kid, it's not that I didn't know it was wrong. I did, because I lived a very different kind of experience growing up. I lived in Jamaica, Queens, which was, lower class, working class, and predominantly African American. I went to a school that was predominantly Jewish. So I didn't understand the animus, but it wasn't shocking because it's just the way it was. This is how adults in my orbit spoke and behaved. And now, of course, I learned a long time ago that it wasn't just something I disagreed with, but it was deeply wrong. But I guess I say it the way I say it is just to underscore how casual and accepted it was. As far as my grandfather, he was basically the only person in the family whose opinion mattered. He had all of the power. It was a very patriarchal system I grew up in. There was a lot of misogyny, so being a girl in that family was an automatic strike against you. And my grandfather was the kind of man who believed in dynasty in a way. I mean, he wouldn't have put it in those terms, but, he had his real estate empire, and his oldest son and namesake, my father, was going to be his successor, and his empire was going to last in perpetuity. Unfortunately, for my father's sake, he wasn't the right kind of person in my grandfather's eyes. My grandfather needed somebody who was a killer, who was a tough guy, somebody who would win at all costs and was not weak in any way. In my family, being kind was considered being weak. Admitting your mistakes and apologizing for them was equated with weakness as well. So I don't know exactly when it happened, but at some point, certainly I would imagine by the time my dad was in college, my grandfather already knew that he was probably not going to cut it as his heir apparent. So Donald, who was 7.5 years younger, learned from my grandfather's psychological and emotional abuse of my dad. And the message was essentially, don't be like Freddie. And since my grandfather ran my family as a zero-sum game, and there could only be one winner and everybody else was a loser, Donald was determined to win. And he, in my grandfather's eyes at least, did, and, successfully auditioned as my dad's replacement.